Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. I'm glad that we're here. I hope that the holidays are going well for everyone. Welcome to Let's Be Clear. This is a day and age where there's so much fuzzy thinking, where you can't get a straight answer if you ask five straight questions. And there's so much fuzziness out there that on this program, we aim for clarity. We're not aiming to bamboozle you, to be articulated. No, no, none of the above, although the last would be good. We are aiming to be clear, to have a little clarity, to make sure that people understand what the issues are, what the solutions are, and even more important, what is the question that we have to answer. I am blessed and honored to have uh, two, and we'll have three guests today who really are struggling in their own way to bring some clarity to some very confused situations. I, of course, am speaking about Ms. Maya Wiley, who, if it's up to God and her hard work, may have another title before long. I'm sure that somewhere in the conversation she will put that in. And Ms. Jennifer Rashkamar, who has another title that we all better get used to, and that is Assembly Member. And she fought in an incredible battle, and she is the first not Indian woman, I suspect, in the assembly. Is that true, Miss Rashkama?
That is
I did it
correct.
right? Oh,
Yes.
that's probably a first and the last for me, but that's all right. That's all right. You guys keep keep praying for me, and we'll make this one work. We are speaking of a lot of firsts. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by our majority leader, who is a first in her own right. But we are speaking of an incredible personality that is now the vice president elect. We'll have to get rid of that last word. And we're speaking about Kamala Harris. We're speaking about a person who straddles so many different worlds and wears them so well that if you're in her presence, you become instantly comfortable. And we are speaking of the first person of color to be a vice president, the first woman to be a vice president, the first black woman to be a vice president, the first Indian woman to be a vice president. Man, we could go on. And I'm sure I missed the first sorority sister to be a vice president. I'm sure I missed a dozen of them. But don't worry, folk. Uh, in a moment, Miss Wiley will see, will tell me what I missed and why is this such, besides those superficial firsts that I just gave, why is this an important thing for the nation? Maya, well, let me get your take on this. Why are you happy, and I suspect you are, about Kamala Harris assuming the vice presidency?
I am thrilled about Kamala Harris assuming the vice presidency because she is not only a smart, competent, committed public servant and has been her entire career, but she represents what has been so critically important to Black women. And not only Black women, but especially Black women who have been we have been treated as the beasts of burden for this democracy for generations. We are the ones who have constantly been asked not only to step up and vote consistently, which we always have, but to make sure we get folks to the polls, that we get folks registered, that we have demonstrated time and time again that we show up for this democracy, even when folks try to throw the barriers in our way. And we're doing that while we're trying to get our kids fed. We're doing that while we're trying to get them schooled. We're doing that while we're trying to get other people's kids fed and other people's kids to school. And so to finally see this country both recognize and embrace the leadership of Black women, not just our ability to be the women with the broad shoulders who carry this country, like so many women, like all women do, but that we can also lead this country, unite this country, and call it to a higher purpose and to meet its greatest aspiration of being a more perfect union. And that means the world.
Well, does it mean the world to you, Assemblywoman Rashkumath? Does it mean the world to you?
It absolutely does.
Why
Thank
is
you.
that?
Well, thank you, Senator Sanders, for having me on the show. And thank you, Ms. Wiley, as well. It means the world to me that Kamala Harris will be the next Vice President of the United States. Like so many South Asian families, my family came to this country with high hopes. My mom was born in a mud hut. My family came here with little. And they came because they believed that this is the land of opportunity. And Kamala Harris's election really proves the faith that that is in fact true. As we know, she is half Black and half South Asian. And her election means so much for our community. The community of South Asians in America is one of the fastest growing in the whole country. If you look at the numbers, in 2000, there was only 2 million. By 2015, over 5 million. Now we're at 6 million South Asians all across the country. And she really represents that group. And if you look at her name, Kamala Devi Harris, Kamala and Devi, that's as Indian as it gets. Devi actually means goddess in India. Now, as Ms. Wiley also pointed out, the American economy has ridden on the labor of women of color for so long. A little known fact is that even during the Civil War, Black women were responsible for being doctors and nurses and caretakers. So that's just one example of how women of color in history have really been the ones that have been powering the economy. Even over half of the low wage workforce is women of color right now. So how gratifying it is that we now have a woman of color in one of the highest positions of the land. You know, the time has come, the time is here. We are so excited. The community is really on fire right now. It's incredible.
Now, wait a minute, Jennifer. Isn't her power superficial and perhaps ceremonial? Isn't it power based on whatever the president wants it to be?
I don't believe that that's true. First of all, she is now a brand name all over the country.
Okay.
So and that's very powerful. That is sending a message to all minority communities, all women across the country. Okay, we've never had a woman in that position. Now, keep in mind the history here. It's been exactly 100 years since American women got the right to vote.
Yes.
And now,
Now, is it possible? And then I'll ask Ms. Wiley a question. Is it possible that the president just uses her simply as that, to go around and cut ribbons and say nice things about women and completely segmentize the vice president, to have a division of labor where men do world moving stuff and she cuts the ribbons? Is that not a possibility, Ms. Assemblywoman?
I look, if you look at the Biden Harris transition team, it
Okay.
all says Biden Harris, right? And I think that everybody sees Kamala Harris as the future. There's already been a lot of speculation about her presidential prospects. In fact, she formerly was a presidential candidate. So I don't think anyone looking at this is saying, oh, Kamala, yeah, she's going to take the back seat. She clearly is a woman on the rise.
Well, she may be on the rise, Miss Wiley, but and then she may indeed be the future, but I'm talking about the present. What is to prevent Joe Biden, President Joseph Biden, from saying, okay, Kamala, I got some nice ribbons over there. Here is your scissor. I want you to go around barnstorming. You can go to every women's group, Black group, Indian group, all kinds of groups, and cut every ribbon that your little heart desires, and you leave the foreign policy and the domestic work to me.
Joe Biden made it clear that he may be a one-term president, not a two-term president. And as a one-term president who is long longtime committed leader of the Democratic Party, would simply be unraveling the future of the party if he treated someone with the acumen and the track record of a Kamala Harris as if she's a ribbon cutter. And the other thing I would say is, have you met Kamala? Because she is not going to allow herself to be marginalized. This is a woman who became the first woman of color to become a district attorney in Oakland. This is a woman of color who became the first woman attorney general in the state of California. This is a woman who became the senator, a US senator, as a Black Asian woman. And not only that, established herself quickly as someone who is going to command and control hearings with the likes of a Bill Barr, a slippery eel who she nailed to the wall, and the same thing with now Justice Kavanaugh. She is not someone
she did a pretty good job with Biden too, but you would say.
And with Biden too, but this is exactly the point. This is not a ribbon cutter. This is a woman who takes leadership, who takes control of leadership, and it would be impossible for the Democratic Party to see a future for itself if it does not lean into this incredible momentum and energy it has built with its base. And with its base, that is the base that ensured that the Jamala ticket, as I call it, became now the White House.
Well, it certainly is in the White House, but when she was out in the, I don't know what they call the house in San Francisco, uh, she had her policies were not exactly progressive indeed. Some could argue they weren't even liberal. They were fairly conservative policies as a district attorney and other positions. What say you to that?
I think that we should look at one moment in time here and ask yourself about what Kamala really believes when you look at this. Remember when she was presiding over a Senate hearing and she was questioning the chief of Homeland Security? And
I
at that
remember it
moment,
well.
children were being separated from their parents at the border. It was a
But wait a
agreed.
minute, didn't she want to separate them for playing hooky? Didn't she? Wait a minute, you're making my point. You may not remember. Hers was a policy of uh, th- th- I'll be kind and let me lay it out fairly. Uh, a children's attendance in school is a very serious thing to everyone and should be. Some people have come up with the idea that parents should be more responsible or held more accountable if children don't go to school. Some people who hold that position have said that the parents should be put in jail if the children do not go to school. Kamala Harris was one of the people when she was a district attorney who advocated such policies. I see Miss Wiley smiling. She must
Well,
know something.
no, I'm gonna say you are right to raise the issue, Senator, and you are right to say that there is a serious policy debate and a serious issue. But if you look at what her record was, she did not have a zero tolerance policy on parents around truancy. And in fact, it had to happen multiple times. And I think there's a legitimate critique about the policy. But I think what we forget, and I think this is the importance, and we have to hold it up when we hold women of color to standards that other folks are not held to, is she was a first. She was elected district attorney as a reform district attorney when there was no roadmap. We're talking, the mid 2000s. It was a time in which there was not a track record like we had now with Ken Thompson, or what we have in Philadelphia, where we have now a body of policies that folks running as reform district attorneys can pull from, have models to pull from. She was at the forefront of creating diversion programs and actually trying to keep folks out of jail. And she was also at the forefront of instituting, implicit bias training in policing. She was one of the first to do those things. So can you look at her record and say there was some things she was trying to accomplish and it didn't all get accomplished in the right way? I think that's fair. I don't think anybody is perfect. But I think the question is, what was the period of time? What
Yeah.
did people know? What were people trying to figure out? Because essentially the critique becomes, if you're a trailblazer, you can't make mistakes, or you
Mm.
can't have misjudgments, or the implementation has to be perfect. And this is a standard that we hold women in particular, and women of color, and to a higher standard of, because we're constantly questioning the competence, and we're constantly questioning the principles and the values. And I would argue that as other reform and criminal justice reform leaders in California have, women on the defense side have, is that she actually was the real deal. And that is what is so important to remember. And I also agree with Jennifer that if we look at her current record, she has borne that out, and she's borne it out both with the policies she ran on as president, and she's borne it out in the ways in which she has led in the Senate. And that is what has to matter here, rather than tearing down our accomplishments as leaders who have been shown to be innovative. Rather than pointing only to the things that could be done better and that we should learn from and that we should correct, because I agree with you. We should not be throwing parents in jail because of truancy problems. We should be solving the underlying causes. But that was 2007. It is 2020. And she is the leader we need now. And I think we have to embrace, rejoice, and as always, hold government accountable, hold Joe Biden and Kamala Harris accountable, hold the Congress and the Senate accountable, as we must hold our leaders accountable.
To be fair to Kamala Harris, she has also post that point said that the reason why she was doing this, according to her, was to provide a dialogue to force the parents to deal with the issue, and that was something to hold over people's heads. But to her, according to what she said, the dialogue was more important than the jail. And just to be fair to her argument, um, while I do believe that all leaders, male, female, and others, need to be held accountable, that you can't move away. I also believe that people can grow. That I think Muhammad Ali said it best, Jennifer, when he said that if you believe at 50 the same thing you believed at 30, you wasted 20 years. So I think that people can grow, and but Jennifer, how do we hold our leaders accountable? How do we hold a Kamala Harris accountable?
Well, I mean, I think she is somebody who decided to embark on a career after law school of making change on the inside because she believed that that's how we really get things done. And I
Okay.
really respect her journey. That's what her career has been. And she has shown that she stands up for immigrant children. Okay. When there was an egregious human rights violation at the border, she stood up. And not only did she stand up, but she was one of the most eloquent spokesperson for the issue. Okay, so I think that's all very important to remember.
The-
Now, how do we judge? You say, how do we hold people accountable?
okay.
I mean, I think it's the exercising our First Amendment rights, right?
Okay.
Right now, everyone's doing it on social media, holding people accountable. It's writing op-eds in the papers. It's expressing yourself, and then it's the leader's job to respond. Okay, it's the leader's job to be tough and to really address those concerns in an inclusive way. And I believe that she has done that and she has been doing that her whole career. But you're absolutely right that it is the people's job to hold the leaders accountable. That is one of the fundamental principles of our country. And the Democratic Party has done that very well in the race with Kamala Harris. And in the end, she prevailed. People believed in her and Biden. And now I'm looking forward to how they're going to unify the country and move us forward.
Well, that brings me to that question, Miss Wiley. How are they going to unify this country? This election has been there's never been an election like this in the American history. We are so evenly divided, and so radically different. It's not just we differ over here and there. No, we're talking about two different versions of America. Now, how on this planet is the Biden Harris, and I'm just focusing on Vice President Harris because this is a program devoted to her. The same thing that I'm saying needs to be said to President elect Joseph Joseph Biden. But we'll deal with him at another day. We'll have a Joseph day on another day. This is a Kamala day, so we won't water that down and take away from her incredible victory. Now, how, Maya, is she going to bring this country together? And how would you do it if you were the president of, let's say, New York City?
Well, those are two different approaches, because one of the challenges that a Kamala Harris faces in a country that is not just divided, it's divided along racial lines. And we need to be honest about that. This is not the 78 million people who voted for Jamala are, are simply representative of the diversity of this country in a particular way. And the 70 million who voted for Donald Trump are often in very segregated communities, right? That don't look like the nation. And that creates a challenge, but also the fact that we're not getting the same information about what our problems are and what our solutions are. That's a huge structural problem we have with information and with news flow. And as we saw with Fox News was not sharing the facts in many instances, but rather being used as a bully pulpit for a particular perspective as opposed to facts. That's a big challenge. And one of the things that it means for Kamala Harris and what it means for me as the next New York City mayor is, how do you reach people outside of just using earned media? Because earned media is where we're already deeply divided and where we're missing and losing the opportunity to connect to one another and to understand what we are facing, what the facts are, get the credible messengers who are credible to the communities that need to receive the facts so that they're able to understand exactly what we need to debate and discuss and find solutions around. So at the national level, that's very challenging because we're a massive country. And it's a massive territory. And so Kamala has to start being one who is cultivating the relationships with community-based leadership where she can find allies in order to have credible messengers outside of the news media to get the facts. We're a big city. We're 330 square miles. We have 5 boroughs. We have 800 languages spoken here, and 40% of our city it was born in another country. So we also cross a lot of diversity. We have a lot of community-based leaders, and we have to be engaging and partnering with what are the facts of this critical crisis we face. What are the real hard questions and real hard decisions? And how should we be prioritizing it, understanding that every single community is facing some of the same challenges, like, sanitation and getting our garbage picked up, to wanting to feel safe in our streets. But how we're experiencing that is not identical. Because where gun violence is happening in the city is not the same as where folks are concerned because they're seeing street homelessness, but they're not seeing guns and gun violence, right? They're not exactly the same problems. And so we have to be able to listen to the community leaders who are representing what those realities are for those different communities. And also recognizing that we have to be responsive in different ways, understanding that it's not going to be a one size fits all solution. And that's part of what helps us come together, because that's a kind of a leadership that does something different from what, say, a Donald Trump did, and different from sometimes what Bill de Blasio did, which is an us, them, rather than a we. And we need leadership that says it's a we, and we're also going to be responsive to where and how our needs and priorities differ from one neighborhood to another, and take account of that and listen and be reflective and provide solutions.
Jennifer, there hasn't been a major leader in New York City, woman leader outside of, I think Ruth Messenger was the last multi-borough leader we've had. What there must be
Don't forget Tish.
some.
Don't
What
forget Tish.
are the different? Oh, Tish. Well, Tish. Well, she's statewide, and I'm
Well, she
really
was public advocate.
okay. I stand corrected then. I stand corrected. But with women making 51% of the at least 51% of the population, Jennifer, and voting probably, women probably vote around 58%, if not more. Jennifer, what are the handicaps to women rising in leadership?
Correct. There's never been a woman president. There's never been a woman governor in New York. There's never been a woman mayor.
Yeah,
So,
to all of those. Go ahead.
yes. So we have a long way to go, but we are getting there. I can tell you that I emerged from women's political groups.
Mm.
There was a culture of young women's political groups, and that culture was very much like a sorority of people who believed that young women should go for it and that they deserve a seat at the table of power. And it's because of the influence of those new groups that I am here today. And I think that you see women running younger, and we're going to see dramatic changes in leadership in the next decade, I predict.
But what are the things handicapping this already? Why has it taken so long? What is holding back women?
It's only been 100 years
Oh,
that women have had the right to vote. So let's keep this in perspective. We're getting there, and yes, change doesn't happen fast enough, but it is happening. I think that one thing that was missing was support structures for women. Okay, those support structures are now being built. We see groups that are actively training women to actually run for office. So that was one factor. And I think that also having the same access to mentorship networks, right, and really being brave and not being afraid to fail. But I think that is also something new. Sometimes people have had expectations for women that they don't want women to ever fail. Women have to do it right. They also have to be perfect. But now the culture is more women can explore, and women can really be the man in the arena, like Teddy Roosevelt used to say, the man in the arena. People who try, people who fail, but people who devote themselves to a cause. I think that adventurous spirit is one that more women are starting to adopt. So things are changing, the culture is shifting, and I'm so excited to see all the women who are going to be in leadership. And I'm so excited to see the majority leader who just joined us.
Well, I had said earlier as she unmutes herself that if she showed up wearing red, I was going to be scared because everybody on here has some type of red on, and I don't know what this is saying. When women start wearing red, maybe that's a sign that something is happening or has happened, and it's just everybody who can't deal with a woman leader need to get out the way.
Thank you.
Now I'm glad, Madam Leader, that everybody is starting to pick up that you have been super. You've been super to us for the longest. I don't understand why we're making all this noise about you. Haven't they noticed how super you have been all the time? I'm glad that they are now saying the leader of a super majority, but it takes a super leader to lead that majority. Because let me tell you, for those who don't know, it is herding cats. And she had mastered the task of herding cats. I said it, she did not. And I'm speaking about myself, only myself. Everybody else is fantastic and does right. I'm speaking of myself. Madam Majority, Super Majority Leader, I'm really glad to see you here. I'll let you say hi, and then I'm going to give you a question on Kamala Harris.
Okay. Well, first of all, Senator Sanders, it's so good to be with you. And for I see you've got your little bit of red on there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You
I have
know,
an X and a Y chromosome.
you
Always
know,
remember.
I will say that I'm very happy to see my other sisters in government and politics and doing the people's work. And yes, I don't know why. I guess great women think alike, right? That we all decided to be in red today, but it's good to join you, and I'm excited about the prospects for all of us. Yes, Kamala Harris's ascent has really spotlighted, I think, women leadership, Black women leadership. And, we very often, as you know, just kind of fly under the radar and just do our work. And it's fine. You recognize me, you don't recognize me. We know the work has to be done. So it's nice to be in the spotlight for a moment, but I'm sure everybody will agree that we will continue always to be focused on what it is people sent us here to do. And it's just a privilege to be able to lead not cats, but extraordinary,
Yes.
extraordinary public servants, including you, who have made it a priority to make sure that the people who sent them there are represented in the best, most important and integral way possible. So thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being somebody who always supports me. Appreciate it.
Well, as long as you're doing the people's work, I must admit, just I would say it off camera, on camera, without a camera. As long as you're serving the people, then we need to just back that. And on a personal level, I have always found women's leadership so much clearer, so much less tension. Well, but that's my view, and I'll say it whatever group. But I'll say this also: what is going to prevent President Biden from delegating Vice President Harris, Madam Leader, to cutting ribbons and speaking to women's groups and speaking to groups of the South Asian community, Black groups, and going around and doing all of, she could speak to every sorority, fraternity, she could speak to all of those things, but just let the let the fellas get back to the business and you guys go ahead and do that stuff. What's going to prevent that?
I think we the people uh, will prevent that. I think we have a very woke electorate. At least that's what I want to believe. We know what it's been like for the past 4 years. We've been wandering in a terrible, terrible, terrible wilderness, dragging us backwards. And the fact that so many people stood up for the nomination of a Kamala Harris in this role is important. And, she didn't get this far to just be left cutting ribbons, nor does she embody that energy at all. I think the president elect made it clear that his choice of a vice president was not somebody who was going to be ceremonial. This person was supposed to be the last voice that he heard when he was facing difficult decisions. And he chose someone who he felt was credible enough, wise enough, pragmatic enough, centered in public service enough to be that last voice. So Kamala's definitely that person. And I think between all of us consciously supporting her and the fact that he chose her to be someone very special, and as we know, the president in waiting, that the fact that she is that person means that the expectation is very, very high for her. And I'm sure for her, because she is so accomplished and she is used to being a doer. Anybody relegating her to just cutting a ribbon or talking to just one segment of the people would find, I'm sure, someone who would not easily fit into that role, and it would be very, very uncomfortable. So I think there's a lot of reasons why that's not going to happen.
Miss Roxkama, Assemblywoman, why was the Indian population, the South Asian population, motivated in this race? There have been many races that have gone on and have not seen the turnout that we've seen in this one. Why were they motivated?
for the first time, we had someone from the South Asian community running for one of the highest offices in the land. And I think that this is what's been happening in the South Asian community. The South Asian community is finally having a political awakening in the United States of America. And it's very exciting to see that and to be a part of that. This is a community that's on fire right now and that is so eager to take a seat at the table of power. And that was embodied in Kamala Harris. And I can tell you, I had been in rooms of South Asian leaders in New York where Kamala came and addressed everybody, and the energy in the room was incredible. And I found her to be incredibly supportive to everyone, including myself, which deeply touched me when I was beginning my own local race. And to really see her trying to inspire all women and really uplift our community was an incredible thing. And she has inspired a whole generation now of South Asian Americans to be politically involved.
Well, you ran in a very inspirational race. I share some of your borders with you in Southeast Queens, so I can attest that you ran a positive, inspirational race. Uh, but Ms. Wiley, I'm gonna put some facts out there, and then I want your reaction to these facts. Uh, President-elect Biden would not be there without Black women.
True.
President Biden we would have my cousin, President Sanders, there had not my cousin. Family reunion was really sad this year. Let me tell you, my cousin may have been there if Black women in South Carolina had not jumped up and resurrected President Biden and just turned him around. And the numbers say that the majority of the voters that came out were Black women in the Democratic primary, mind you, and and this is true throughout the South and other places. We could go a step further. Georgia goes blue. My friends, you guys have never been to Georgia. I, outside of Atlanta, man. As a matter of fact, you might not want to go outside of Atlanta. Don't do it at night. Do it in the day. Stacey Abrams has done an amazing position to bring possibilities. All right, Miss Wiley. Doesn't that mean that Black women should get their share of all of the good things that government has? And doesn't that mean that the Black population, among the other populations, should do well under President Biden? And how do we know when that this is happening?
Yes. Yes. And the way we know is by a couple of different things. And that conversation is happening right now in transition, which is, are we represented? And I want to echo what Jennifer is saying. We have to see representation of all our different communities, right?
Sure.
And that must include Black community. That must. And we're seeing already a debate. We've already heard from Congressman Clyburn, who was the first person to establish that run through the South in South Carolina with his very public endorsement, deeply respected family nationally, not just in South Carolina, and that he is already sounding the alarm that he's concerned about whether or not we're getting enough representation in some of what we're seeing. So we have to keep looking. That they're not done. They're still filling out the cabinet, but we want to see representation. But the second thing is, it doesn't start. I mean, I think to Jennifer's point, our excitement, part of our excitement is because people who know our experiences are going to be better at crafting the solutions that meet our needs, right? When we understand what we need. And so that's why representation matters. But then we need to see it in the policy. We need to see it in the
Miss
funding.
Wiley, doesn't Clarence Thomas know our experiences? So under those conditions,
look, it's not only representation in the sense of right? I mean,
Ah.
but it's not purely. I mean, the Jamala ticket won on a platform. So it
Yeah.
is folks who are going to carry the mission of that platform. And that's not just about skin color, but it is about the experience of communities with regard to that platform. And they ran on a platform. Biden ran on a platform that said, we're going to do better on healthcare. Who were the communities that were devastated by COVID and more likely to both be in communities that didn't have enough hospitals, didn't have enough healthcare, didn't have enough health insurance? Immigrant communities, Black people, right? You Southeast Queens, right? East Elmhurst, Corona.
Okay.
We know where ground zero was for COVID, and we know who the statistics in New York City is. 88% of deaths in one statistic that I saw were Black and Latino, and people of color. That is exactly. Then, if you're going to create a healthcare agenda, are you creating a healthcare agenda that meets and understands both who is uninsured, who is underinsured, where there's self-delivery, and are you taking account of that and delivering that? That's just a firm, hard, clear fact, disparity that requires national attention. The same thing on bailout, right? We had this conversation about how we get relief packages. In New York City, we're looking, and state, right? As you all know, not just city, the budget hole we're looking at is a creation of the pandemic, right? This is a pandemic-driven revenue crisis. We don't solve it. We don't save our subways. We don't actually ensure that 400,000 New Yorkers facing eviction can continue to pay the rent unless we get a relief package that understands the pain points, who's experiencing them, and invests in ensuring that we're not just manufacturing an expansion of humanitarian crisis. These are all hard, clear facts that need clear and specific policies. And so the representation is only one piece, but it is a piece, but it is also that we're seeing the policies and the work emerge that says we're going to get the dollars into the communities that are so often disinvested in. And then we have the responsibility to do that then at state level and at city level as well, when those dollars come in, that we're ensuring that we're investing in communities appropriately and based on need. And that's all of our leadership challenge and all of the opportunity that we have right now.
Madam Leader, we have a lot of firsts. You have made some and a lot of firsts. In fact, everybody up here have made first, but never before has there been an all-woman press corps that the president has come up with. So women have gotten their fair share. We can all go home and go back to whatever we've done. We have arrived. Isn't this true? Or if it's not true, how do we press for a fair share?
Well, I think it's interesting that he has an all-woman press corps, because I think you said it. Women's direction is very clear.
Yeah.
It's clear. So I think the ability to communicate clearly what the objectives are, what the agenda is, and how it's going to be carried forward is going to create an atmosphere around this presidency, frankly, that we've never seen before. When women show up, we not only make things better for, our immediate circle, but we uplift everybody in everything. And at this moment, this COVID crisis moment, where we have been forced to take a look at our conditionings, to be forced to take a look at our conditions, to be forced to take a look about how we're doing things. And obviously, we are articulating this in every single way. We will also be able to take a look at how we can include more and who needs to be included, and then have living examples of what that inclusion can do to move our country, our state, our local, environments ahead. So we're showing up. everybody's paying attention. People are going to be seeing things in ways they've never seen it before from a clear group of people who actually know why they're there. They're not there to be grifters. They're not there to make sure they have a lifelong employment plan for their relatives, and they're not, steal. I mean, these are people who are actually folks about things. And also, I know we're looking for more representation, but his picks in terms of the Treasury Department, and I mean, there are people showing up in places that we've never been before, ever. And so, I think once if you can see me, you can be me. And we're telling people not only that, but look beyond what you can see, and have a vision for a world that encompasses a Jennifer. Congratulations, by the way, Assemblywoman. I hadn't met you, so it's nice to meet you. And of course, it's always good to see Maya. But the reality is that we're just here now. We're here now. We're not going backwards. We're not being hidden. We're here. And every opportunity we get, whether you give it to us or not, will be taken by the next brave woman and the next visionary woman. And we will be able to, as Sojourner said, set this place right, I believe, with the help of great men. I mean, nobody's saying we're doing it by ourselves, but I think we're done with sitting on the sidelines and sitting this stuff out. We're done.
I just have to give one shout out to the amazing woman theme, which is Corinne Jean-Pierre, who's a dear friend, Haitian woman. So this is also this way in which we're representing, and Corinne is no joke on policy. She is not just a mouthpiece, right? She is brilliant, and she's one of us, and it's so exciting.
That's right.
Do you know where she got her first start? She used to work for me.
Are you serious? I didn't know that. Well, now everything makes sense.
I raise leaders, and she is. I am here to tell you that that woman is a tiger.
I love it.
Anybody who believes that she is a pushover, my God, are you in for a rude awakening? That woman is an incredible. And her thinking is so lucid. We would have to do a Corinne show if we but I raise leaders. Which brings us back. Malcolm X taught us, Assemblywoman. Malcolm X said that anytime that you see society is not moving, it's because women are being held back. And he advocated finding whatever is holding back women and moving it if you want to move society forward. What are the next things that we need to do to move society forward? And how do we move women forward? Assemblywoman, I'm coming to you. Madam Leader, you're going to be last. We're going to go to Maya in the middle. There you go. Assemblywoman, give us your prescription. How do we move society by moving women forward?
I think that is an excellent point. I think when women are in the room, as the majority leader said, things get better. And there are people that actually try to quantify that.
Wait, are you speaking about the 3 men in the room?
I'm talking about all rooms, every room, including
that. That is over. I'm sorry. Don't mind me. Please continue.
So yes, having women in the room, women have also been shown to be very good at this. We are good at this. And everyone on this panel today knows that. Everyone on this panel has made history. We all know what it takes. It takes grit and perseverance. And when you put women in the room and let them be persevering and let them use all their gifts, amazing things happen. It has been shown that women are very good at networking and collaborating and building coalitions as well. Okay. And that's what our country needs right now. You had mentioned, Senator, unity. And can our country unify? And we need that now more than ever. Right now, we are returning to decency after 4 years of very indecent politics, and things that were just unacceptable, right? From a Muslim ban that the president enacted, saying that people from Muslim majority nations can't come to this country. For the first time, we had religion used as a basis for whether you can belong in America, which is fundamentally un-American. First Amendment says freedom of religion. So we're going back now to decency, and women are a crucial part of the equation in terms of bringing the country back, unifying the country once again. And I have great hope because the reason is, I was in Southern Virginia in 2008 when Obama was elected for the first time. And I saw with my very own eyes Virginia turn blue for the first time. And I saw people with my own eyes, Republicans coming to the polls who said, we, for the first time, are going to vote Democrat. I know it's possible that we can unify. And I think that now with a woman in the vice presidential role and women, young women running for office in huge numbers, breaking barriers all across the country, that happened this cycle too. I think that's all going to move us in the right direction. We're going to close that pay gap because Black women now make 64 cents for every dollar that a white man makes. For Latino women, it's even less. So this has to change. We have to close that wage gap. We have to get women in the top positions because women are now entering the workforce, but they're not at the top levels. And when we look at a Kamala Harris, we see that it can change and that's very important. I'm very optimistic. The next 10 years, we're bringing women into the rooms. We brought a woman to the vice presidency. We're going to unify this country. The future is very bright.
Well, one of my favorite writers, Maya, said that Black women are the mules of the world, of the earth. Now, how the eyes were watching God, of course, is the book. Now, how do we change that? How do we show Zora Neale a new world and do it here?
So I just want to echo what Jennifer said, because I thought it was so dead on, the importance of women, but it's also recognizing when we talk about investments, because that's a lot of what government does, right? It invests, and it invests in our most precious resource, which is our people. So women, the investment in women and the investment in women of all races to get extremely good quality childcare, right? To get the supports to have paid leave for family, for taking care of family members who are sick, the supports that ensure that there can't be a pay gap, that also ensure that women aren't trapped, particularly women of color, only in the jobs that, while they may be fast growing, are also poverty wage jobs, right? Because that's another big part of the story, is that the dignity of a home healthcare aide is not recognizing that her work is hard and it costs, and it should cost a lot more than she's being paid, given the difficulty of the work. Because what we know from COVID and what we saw from COVID is women had to step out of the job market if they could afford to, because it was too hard to have the kids at home and provide the supports that the kids needed to do online learning, which was just too inadequate. And so many families were struggling. And the ones that were lucky, it's the woman who bore the brunt of both, either trying to work and do that, or if lucky enough to have the household resources, actually come out of the job market to keep supporting the kids. Those are the kinds of things that keep women out of leadership, is that we don't invest in women's abilities to take care of their families and be the leaders they are. Those are policy decisions. They're ones we can solve both with how we're investing, what we're investing in, and paying attention to how women have to be the beneficiaries of those investments. Because every last one of us, I think, who has the privilege of being here with you, Senator Saunders, probably has a story about what enabled us the privilege of seeking to serve the public. And we have to democratize that so that so many more women have that opportunity.
Well, Madam Leader, as we come to the close of you, of course, will have the last word here. But I reflect on what Maya was saying. I have a daughter who is has young children. Oh my. And is she being, I can see it, her being pushed out of the market. It is so unfair. And she has a good husband, which is not as uh not what it needs to be in society. She has a good husband, but I see the forces just pushing this poor woman out of the market more and more. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see and so wrong to see this happening. Is there anything that we can do at the state or in the as a nation? I'll be kind to us. What can we do to aid these women? We'll never get we'll set back the presidency if we keep pushing people out of the market. How do we handle this, Madam Leader?
Well, I don't think that when I remember while people were talking, I remember the first time that I, as a young mother, had to protest, and it was around daycare because
Mm.
they were kicking me out of daycare. I think I was making $7,000 a year, and they told me I made too much to have subsidized daycare. And fortunately, my mom was still alive, and she helped me. But that was really the only way that I was able to work. Which I was a single mother. I was a teenage mother. So what you're saying is that we haven't come that far from that space. But what is different, and this is why we can at least be optimistic, is whereas there were not people at the table who looked like me to tell my story, who looked like Jennifer or your daughter or Maya and the countless faceless women out there. Now we are showing up on every level of government, telling our story and demanding that our stories be heard. And yes, the resources that need us to have a complete story are being put forward. So we cannot underestimate the power of state government. And I think we've seen that uh, once the 2016 election happened, and then everybody started looking at the state. How can you help? How can you help? And started electing state legislatures that actually reflected the values of the people, so that no matter how crazy things seem to be going in Washington, when you talk about paid family leave and you talk about raising the minimum wage, you're talking about reproductive health care, you're talking about now, environmental protections and investment in daycare and investment in health care and gun safety. I can tick off, and you need to be really proud of the groundbreaking things we did and continue to do, because we're at the table. Women are at the table. We knew we had to codify Roe v. Wade, despite what they said they were going to do. We know that we need paid family leave. We knew we had to raise the minimum. We know these things. We know we have to invest in childcare, and we have to invest in education. And there's more and more women coming to these tables. So it's a pandemic, and again, everything's been exposed to some people. Other people, we already knew it, but now it's hyper amplified. And so every single one of us has to get to work, and we have to understand, I can't change everything in one day. Nobody can. But we have to be deliberate in our choices, deliberate in our recognition and our ability to confront problems and make sure that our priorities are reflected in our policies and our budget. And the more that we are there, the more you will see that.
Mm. Well put. Now, I mean, there's so many questions, worthy questions. I'd have to get you guys back because I should have asked, why did so many black men vote for Trump? I would have loved to get your perspective.
We need to ask you that.
Well, well, and I still want to see the academic in me still wants the the real data, because we
Yes.
know exit polls can be real off.
Yes.
So before we
I'm
start
clear.
attacking the brothers, let's see the real data, and then we'll figure out whether we need to attack the brothers.
Well, I
love the
agree
brothers.
with you that that 20% is probably too high. You probably, based on mail-in ballots, etc., you're probably closer to 10% ish somewhere, give or take. But 1% is too high from my point of view, and we need to speak about that on another day. I will also point out that New York State bucked the trend where in the state legislature, all of these legislators were turning Republican, and New York State, under our leader, went even more blue. I mean, the Senate now has a super majority. No one is able to tell me when is the last time the Democrats in this state had a super majority. We don't have those super historians. I don't think our supercomputers can keep up with that.
Never happened.
So I'm going to say that this is a first. And it may also say that if the other state legislatures had a woman as the head, maybe they might not have gone that way. Well, we'll never know whether that's true. Here's one thing I do know is true. If they had Andrea Stewart Cousins there, they would not have gone that way. I can't speak for the woman, but I can speak for this one. I can say that I am very grateful that Assembly Member Raj Kumar has come out, and her statements and findings and insights are incredible and will do great in the Assembly. Ms. Wiley, only God knows what's next for you in your future. And if you get your prayers in there right, we'll be back on this panel, but I'll have to call you a different title. For those who don't know, Ms. Wiley is running for mayor of the city of New York. And to my leader, I'm very proud to follow your leadership, and I've said it on camera, off camera, and I've said it to other people. And to me, these are such stupid questions that if anybody raises, can women lead? What year are you living in? Are you 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, you could make that. It's a stupid question. We need to say, where are the women leading us? And this should be the argument that we have. But then again, that's why, get ready for this, you'll love this one. That's why we are Let's Be Clear. And I'm glad that you all have come to this show where we struggle for clarity. We struggle not for fuzzy thinking, but for clarity, to really look at an issue and figure out where we should stand. But you can only do that by having all of the sides and making rational decisions and being clear about it, and having panelists who bring their own clarity to the table. Thank you very much, everyone. Ladies, thank you very much for being who you are. I look forward to working with you in the future. This has been Let's Be Clear, and I'm State Senator James Sanders Jr., or you can call me Sister Lois's son. Every man born of a woman needs to figure out how to follow women. But then again, there I go thinking. God bless you all. Take care.
Thank you.